office hours. Wow. It's something that I've said from the get-go, and I think it's something that needs to be done. It should have been done a long time ago on consideration that this is a state agency which operates without any office hours, any boundaries. Nobody can come here and find someone at the office at any time. I don't know if any business can function properly, and you know, or what you want to operate a business that has nobody there, no time, and when somebody stops by and can't come in. I think this is something that, you know, for the longest I think should have been done, and I think needs to be done, and I'm thanking you that you're at least taking it under consideration of looking at that and spending some time in that area and looking at the feasibility of it. Why have an office? Nobody's there. Why pay all this rent and lease? Nobody's going to use it. I think it's hand in hand. If you want to have it, you might as well have somebody to man it at least some of the time, making that happen. Office hours and things like that, but I think it needs to be really given some careful considerations that we man an office that is unmanned. We pay for a lease that, you know, typically we're giving money away. Won't you give that money back to the auctioneers? Give them a break. I mean, if we're going to occupy that office, I think somebody needs to be in there some of the time and accountability. But it's your choice. Some of y'all may disagree with that, but I mean, if it was your money and it was coming out of your pocket, then you probably would think a little different. And so I think that every paying auctioneer, I mean, I renew my licenses on a routine basis. We'll be renewing them again this year. I have some concerns about, you know, occupying space that's not being utilized. So I think that you all are taking consideration, really putting some teeth in that particular clause, and making sure that somebody's there. At least somebody stops by and answers the phone. Thank you very much.
All right, next item on the agenda is going to be a request by Mr. Robert Burns to reestablish office hours for the LALB's operation.
Thank you, and I appreciate y'all putting this on the agenda, Adam. And again, I'm sorry, the agenda. And again, I want to reiterate, it was so nice to see the smiles of approval of the comments that I made with this. But at any rate, I did request for this item to be placed on the agenda. I am going to be completely transparent with you and state that I did face criticism. When I placed this item on the agenda, the criticism was that they wanted to know where in the world I pulled the number 6 out of the air in terms of the specificity of the number of hours. They thought that was ridiculously low. And I said, well, look, I'll just put it out there as some bare minimum. It's the board's prerogative to go with a higher number if they're so inclined. And I'm just going to briefly state that when the present work situation was first proposed, I was on the board, and I made the specific inquiry. You will be spending meaningful time in the office? And the response was, oh, I'll be spending more time in the office than you can imagine. I have requested the audio tape to substantiate that. It's out of all the tapes that this board has ever had, it's the only one that has gone missing and still to this day cannot be located. As everyone knows, this whole situation, as it exists now with no office hours, was put under scrutiny. I'm not going to go over the entire history of it, but in a nutshell, the legislative auditor issued a report, and then they referred it on to the district attorney, who referred it on to the inspector general. They issued the report that they did, but what I am going to emphasize is that Tom Boulton, and once again, you can call him Mr. Bankson, and if he says something different, then his recollection of this conversation wasn't so great. But he said a performance-based agreement, which is what this board has with Ms. Edmonds, is illegal. His exact word. He said you cannot report that you are working 15 hours a week and then not actually work them. Nevertheless, I have on video Ms. Dow, repeatedly saying, and Ms. Steinkamp is no longer here, and also reiterated that Ms. Edmonds' position is not a function of hours. I have several videos of that taking place. They have openly said there is no problem with her not working 15 hours a week. They are, according to Mr. Tom Boulton at the Inspector General's office, completely 100% off base in that comment. And the reason, I mean, somebody would say, well, okay, if it was illegal, why wasn't something done? And that's a good question. And the reason nothing was done is because the previous governor, who was under the illusion that he would be on the ballot tomorrow, quite delusional, I think everyone would agree, he issued an executive order that carved Ms. Edmonds out and said that if the board is self-funding, I say it's okay. Mr. Preparer, the legislative auditor who issued the report, called me and he said, Robert, he doesn't have the authority to do that. The problem is nobody will challenge it. I am going to, in fairness to Governor Edwards' office, before I proceed further, I don't know what y'all are going to end up doing, but I'm going to lay out my game plan so nobody's in the dark. I'm going to ask him if he stands by that executive order, if he affirms it. If he does, and Mr. Preparer being so emphatic that there is no such authority, it is correct that there was no one to challenge it before. The thing that has changed since this situation has been brought up before is we do have one major change, and that is that we have a new Attorney General. And for those of you who don't keep up with Baton Rouge news, and I may include you, Mr. Bankston's name has come up repeatedly in quite a number of articles, wherein Jeff Landry flatly says he does not believe Mr. Bankston has any business having any state contracts. I believe Mr. Landry would be inclined to challenge this if it continues as it is going. That would be applicable for both boards, not just this one, but the interior design as well. So the ball will first be, I mean, obviously if the board started saying she's got to come into the office all 15 hours a week, everything's off the table. Same for the interior design in 25, there would be nothing to discuss at that point. I can only tell you Ms. Edmonds has been unbelievably adamantly opposed to having any office hours, any. So here's where we are. I do want to make one other quick point and then I will sit down. When the legislative auditor's report came out, there was only one board member who expressed concern about its contents. Mr. Sims, I guess you're getting a lot of compliments from me today, but it was you. And it was asked, what do we do about this legislative auditor's report? And Ms. Dow said, you just file it away, quote, because we report to the governor. And the governor has told us that we're not to do anything with this. We have a new governor, we have a new attorney general. I have the executive order that previous Governor General enacted to carve this out. Mr. Preparer is emphatic that he does not have such authority. I don't know whether Governor Edwards is going to want to reaffirm or not. I am going to ask him. I do have the video. Everybody has seen the video about where he stands about some things that did take place here that the Inspector General cited in the report, and he was very clear, as I think anybody would, say that that doesn't constitute being on the clock. So the ball's in y'all's court. I think I've said about everything. What I do want to do is sit down. I want to get each comment that is made by each person. I want to have the camera focused in, say exactly what you've got to say on the matter, and I especially will be wanting to zoom the camera in if Ms. Dow or Ms. Edmonds would choose to make commentary in these next few moments. So that concludes my presentation. I thank you once again for placing this on the agenda. I think I have clearly laid out where we stand or where the board stands and where it could proceed. Should you have any questions that I feel that I could answer, I will be happy to do so. And with that, I'm going to conclude the little presentation and let the board go in the direction it's inclined to go in. Thank you once again for placing this on the agenda, Mr. Warren.
About 1 minute.
I don't know, you had to ask him.
Can I have 1 minute, right? Okay, that's good. Nothing other than my suggestion would be that each board member ask the same question. You know, do you feel that the office still remains as is, it should be remained with nobody being in. Because, I mean, this is going on too long. Nobody knows when the office is open, but the office is closed. I mean, I don't know what kind of business you're going to operate, but this is a state agency. And therefore, they should have a set office hours. But nobody knows. There's nothing on the site to tell you when the office is open, when it's not, when somebody's there, when it's not. I don't think you have to make a phone call. You have a publication. I don't know any other state agencies that are set up that way, where you have to call or make an appointment or anything else. And I think that's something that needs to be considered. I mean, let's be real now. I mean, if you're gonna do this, you might as well take the bond off the board and give the auctioneers at least one free year without having to do that. Because, I mean, something's going on.
Mr. Phillips, as an auctioneer, I just want to ask you one question pertaining to this particular matter. As an auctioneer, is there any reason that you need to frequent the building to come to check out, say, whatever, to visit with Miss Sandy pertaining to an issue or anything? Is there anything that?
Well, under the previous office administrator, Ms. Wills, you didn't have to have the person. She was always there. And if she wasn't there, somebody was there in her place, a temporary person, something like that. So the luxury of it is, as a state agency, you should, let me repeat what I'm saying, you should have the opportunity to go unannounced at any time.
I agree. I'm not disputing that. What I'm asking is there a particular reason why someone should be frequenting this particular board's office?
Well, one,
As
if
an
somebody
auctioneer.
from the general public had an interest in maybe wanting to know more about the auctioneer or something like that and have access to it, coming into the office would be the only way. If they're in town or if they're passing in town, they can do the same. But if nobody's there, because if you go by there, you're not going to know there's nobody there. You know, somebody may want to investigate me or just check out my profile. They don't have to call. They can just stop by. They don't know the office is not open because it doesn't say on the site. Call before coming. If that was written up there on the site, then that would be a different story. But that's not being publicized. Call before coming. They just figure that the office is open like all other state agents' offices.
Thanks.
Mr. Phillips. Can I ask you a question, please?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
You were on this board up to 2012, correct?
Correct.
Robert served on the board up to when?
I served, I'm assuming that's directed at me so I can answer it. I served from July of 2008 to September of 2010.
Okay, let me ask you a question regarding Ms. Willis. During the period of time that y'all were on the board, I know Freddie was on the board, I believe, when she was terminated, or she's left.
She wasn't terminated.
Or whatever,
No, that-
whatever happened.
okay, yeah.
She left.
Yeah, just so, she'll,
Whatever, she left.
yeah.
Prior to that, was she not a full-time 40-hour-a-week employee?
No.
She was 30. Same
30 hours, same thing, full-time, but 30 hours then, under the law. Anything more than 28 hours up to 3 years ago was full-time. So that made her a full-time employee. Ms. Edmondson works 15 hours a week, which is part-time. I'm not saying she don't need to be there. I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's a difference between what you would consider full-time, somebody to be there every day, and somebody to be there as on an as-needed basis when the chairman does. That's the only point I'm making.
And you're right, Mr. Sims. I'm not saying when, but I know she has to at some point in time, and it should be publicized when the office is open and when it's not. That's all I'm saying. Whether she comes in 1, 2, 3 hours, it doesn't matter to me. But the point is, the general public should know when the office is open. That's all I'm saying.
Reverend Phillips, I have a question. Has there ever been a time that you attempted to get in touch with Ms. Edmonds and she had returned the telephone call?
Well, let me put it this way, several times. And I've actually filed into the record on the board of that. So
Because every time I call, I always get my telephone
you ask me,
returned.
I understand, Jake, you're right. You may have gotten this wrong. In fact, I remember one time, Mr. Burns told me he was heading into the office. And I said, you can't be. The office is closed. Ms. Evans said she wouldn't be there. And when I pops up at the office, he is there. And I was told that the office would be closed. So I have my right to know when the office is open, when it's not. Because had I known that, then that would have been a total different story. That's all I'm saying. And I think each one of y'all who have rational thinking should know that there needs to be some set time for the general public. It's posted on our site where the offices live. From day one, anybody in this room who was on the board at that time noted that that was my stance. I never had a problem with 7 hours to come in office. I just felt that those hours should be posted and the public should be aware. That has been my stand from day one, and that's where I'll still stand. Regardless of how many hours she works, there has to be a set time when that office hours are posted, when somebody can come by there who may be primitive and don't have a phone.
I want to thank Mr. Sims because he just made something come back to me that I should have addressed and forgot to. That legislative auditor's report, and anybody's welcome to go read it, it is very, very clear in stating that you cannot combine multiple jobs to be considered a full-time employee, which is 15 with this board, 25 with the Interior Design Board. Darryl Preparer's report is very succinct in saying you cannot do that for purposes of accruing leave. He also said that not only her, but Ms. Wilkes were to be required to refund the amount of annual leave payments that had been made over the statutory period for which they could be going back to. There again, that didn't turn out to be the case only because Governor Jindal issued that executive order. If Governor Edwards, and he may say, hey, I concur totally with Governor Jindal. I'm just saying that if he does, I think now it can be challenged. And I think it will be challenged. So thank you, Mr. Sims, for bringing that up because and you're the only one who raised concerns about the board. But it says in clear black and white writing, you cannot combine the two jobs to come up and say, well, I work a 40-hour full-time job. And Mr. Sims's point about the 32 hours for any individual board, she would fail to meet the requirement. 25 for that board, 15 for this board. So, yeah. And Mr. Preparer is a very, very well-respected CPA. Obviously, I am biased because I am an inactive CPA too, so I'm certainly going to be complimentary of him, but I think you ask other legislative officers across this nation, he's extremely well thought of. And he said Governor Jindal had no such authority to make this a carve-out. So if he didn't have the authority, that would mean Governor Edwards wouldn't have the authority, but we'll see if he wants to do it. But nevertheless, as I said earlier, there's one way to make it all go away. And I can tell you right now, if you ran an ad in the paper, you know what the job market is. And said, look, you got to be here at this salary, you'd have somebody. Trust me, you would. So.
Let me say this, Mr. Burns keeps referring to me that I asked the question. I did ask the question at the time because at the time, I happened when that legislative auditor report came out in my second or third board meeting. So I was a new board member. I didn't know what was going on. All that was going on when I got here. And I just asked the question. That's why the question was asked on my behalf.
Further questions and discussion?
Well, I'm going to make a motion to do something.
I move that we take this matter under advisement, do some research, and report back to the next meeting. Second.
Can I make one last little comment right before the vote? Mr. Sims, actually, your verbatim commentary when you raised the question of that was that, and I quote, he's not going to file something with the Attorney General's office. Oh, I don't want to wake up here one morning and find out we got legal trouble with one of our employees. So you're right, it was an early on board meeting, but clearly you had concerns, and I have the audio to play back the words you just.
I'm not denying that, Robert.
Okay.
I'm not denying none of that. I'm just saying I was new.
Oh, okay, well, I read too much into what you were saying. I thought you were implicitly saying it's no big deal. I will apologize. I will apologize to you for my adding on not commentary, but an analysis that you told me is not accurate. So, thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.